record this. The assignment is to write 3 little Python programs. And the thing is they progress. So we do the first one, and then we can actually modify the first one to make the second one, and then modify it again to do the third one. So the biggest work is the first one, and then the next ones get easier. But the other thing that we have to do is we have to complete flowcharts on it, right? So we have to do the flowchart, and then we have to do the Python. And I think this is good practice for you for your test and your exam, because I think that you may be asked to do a flowchart and Python, or else they may even give you a flowchart and you have to create the Python from it. So let's do a flowchart of this problem. It'd be good if we understood the problem first, though, I suppose. So what this problem is pretty straightforward. A program to ask a user to enter 10 sales amounts for 10 items and get the average. So this is our standard average program. We know how many times we're going to do it, right? We know we're going to do it 10 times. So we got 2 different types of loops. We got a Sentinel loop and a counted loop. Which one is this? Guess again. Which one is this? Yes, it's a counted loop, because we know how many times we're going to do it. So we're going to use a count, and we're going to go through the loop that many times. Now, with averages, you can break the program up into 3 parts. The first part is where we set all of our variables to zeros. We initialize. So we're going to have a count because it's a counted loop, but we're also going to have a total, because an average is calculated by getting a total and dividing it by the count. So at the start, we need to get a total and an average, a total and a count, and make them 0. Then inside the loop, we have to add to the total and we have to add to the count. Then when we're finished the loop, then we divide the total by the count, and that gives us an average. So pretty much we've got it sorted out in our minds, I hope, how we're going to do that. Let's start our flow chart for that. Where'd that go? I thought I just put, oh, there we go. So let's start. And I guess this is called sales, right? Sales average or something. Right, so that's start our program there. Now, the first thing that we need to do is we need to initialize our total and our count. So we can do that. Let's do this in a box. That's an initialize. So we can say that the total, its initial value is going to be equal to 0. So it takes a value, and our count is going to be equal to 0. That's the initializing. That's starting now. 10 times we have to do this thing, enter the amount. So that's the next step. So that looks like it's going to be in a loop, right? So a loop is going to be controlled by a condition. Condition is going to be shown by a diamond. Somebody wants to say, hi, Manira. So let's put a diamond there. What we're going to do is get the arrow to get the diamond. And how many times? The thing that we're going to do is we're going to do this as long as the count is less than 10, right? Now, see, our count is 0. You see why we had to set our count to 0 before we do this condition? Because this is the control of the while loop, and the control of the while loop, we have to set the control before we go into the while loop. This is the start of the while loop with this diamond. So now the stuff that I'm going to put underneath the diamond is going to be all of the commands that are going to be in the while loop. What we have to do in the while loop is we have to update the total and we have to update the count. But update the total with what? We have to update the total with, a sales amount. So how are we going to get the sales amount? Well, we're going to have to ask the user for that, right? So we're going to do that here. We'll get a sales amount. I just say get sales amount. Get sale, that'll do. So getting the sale, when I say get, and I'm talking in a computer program, that means ask the user to give us that value. So the user will give us that value. Now all we have to do is update these things. How we update them is the total is going to be equal to the total plus whatever the sale is. And the total takes the value of the total plus the sale. And then the count is just going to be incremented by 1. Now, I hope that you noticed there, last thing that we did before we joined the loop, this is the start of the loop. The diamond's the start of the loop. Last thing we did before we joined the loop is we set the count to its initial value, which was 0. Last thing that we do in the loop before we go back to the start of the loop is we updated the count. And so how are we going to show that we're still in the loop? A loop will be shown by us putting an arrow there. When the arrow goes backwards, that means we're in a loop, because every other time the arrow is going forward. At this point here, the arrow is going backwards. I'm going to make this a curvy loop, curvy. I think that's a curve. Don't want an entity relationship. Yeah, curved. And just pull that out so it's not quite so messy. See the arrow going back? The arrow going back means that we are in a loop, right? All the other arrows are going forward. This one's going back. That means loop. Now, the other thing that we should do, because we've got our condition here, is the condition allows 2 things. This is what happens. Going down is what happens if the condition is true. The count is less than 10, then we do this. But if the count is not less than 10, then we end. So I'm just going to put a little note here that this is what we do if it's true. Okay, so what do we do if it's not true? Well, we go somewhere else out of the diamond. I'm going to go to the side just because there's room on the side. And we'll do our calculation of the average here. We calculate the average once we've got the total and we've done it 10 times, right? So the average always is this calculation, the total divided by the count. Now all we have to do is print it out. See, so there's our 10 things. We print that out, do that here. And then we're done. Now, if we've done our flow chart well, if we've done a good job with our flow chart, and I think we have, see what happened there. Done a good job on that flow chart. If we have, then we should be able to look at the flow chart, and directly from this flow chart, we should be able to get our Python code. Our Python code is basically going to go, we're going to start here because this is the start. We're going to start here and we're going to go through following the arrows, and that will give us our Python code. So let's get Python going. Got some folks there. So when you do this, make sure you put your name in it. Okay, so this is what? This is lab, no, assignment. Ooh, sorry about that. Assignment 5. This is problem 1. Because we'll save our programs. Make sure you put your name on there and your student number. And then we can start a program. Now, when we start a program, as I said, we can go straight from here to the program. So the first line of code is just going to be the total. That's that, straight in, right? Now, how do we do this in Python? Well, that's a condition, and it's a loop. So it'd be a condition in a while, right? So that's why we're going to do this. While. That's how we do a condition in a while. Notice I put the colon count. Now, everything that's going to be indented here is going to be these 3 lines of code because they're inside the loop. We can see that they're inside the loop. So let's go and do them. How are we going to get the sale? Well, we don't have a statement called get in that we're using in Python. We have the statement, we use input, right? So we use input to, so you remember this. So sale takes the value of input. Problem is that input only gives us strings. And so we're going to have to convert whatever the string is to an integer. So we're going to get our input. Now, when we look at the way, this is a prompt that we use to get that. And input uses the prompt. So I'm copying that so that I make sure that I've got the right, that I'm using the right thing. Okay, and so inside the input, we put the prompt, and it's as a string. So that's why I'm just putting the string inside there, and then there's our prompt. Right now, the problem is that it's got a number in there. Well, we don't want to have the same number every time. We want to be able to have the numbers from 1 until 10. So how are we going to do that? Well, we replace the number with the variable count because the count will change from 1 to 10. So I'm going to replace this number with the variable count. Well, how am I going to do that? Because I'm inside a string. So I'll just add another string in there. And don't use caps because caps doesn't work. So I got my string in there, and what the string is going to contain is the thing that is going to be the count, which is the variable count. Now, actually, I saw students do this a lot, is just copy the variable and paste it. That way you don't have to worry about spelling mistakes, right? It'll be the same every time. But we don't want the count to be just by itself, because the first time we go through there, the count is 0. But we don't want to print 0. We want to print 1. So we'll add 1 to it. Okay, so that's going to do this thing here, which is enter the sale. That's got that bit. Then what do we have to do? As I said, before we go into the loop, we set our variables to 0. Inside the loop, we update our variables. So we're going to update the total to what? Oh yeah, as I said, maybe it's better to just copy and paste. Then you always get the spelling right. So copy, paste. Total is going to take the value of total plus what? Plus sale. Whatever the sale is, that's going to be added to the total. And then count needs to be updated as well. Count's going to be, going to take the value of count plus 1. So notice at the start of our loop, before we went into our loop, we set the count to its original value. The condition of the loop is the count. And so the last thing that we do in the loop is update the count so that the loop will work. The loop works only with the count. So it means before the loop, we have to set the count. Inside the loop, we have to update the count. Then the condition is the count. We should do these in this position so it's easy for us to edit and understand the loop. The count is the last thing that we do before the while, and then it's the last thing that we do inside the while. Then it's easy for us to understand the loop. It'll also make sure that our total values don't get messed up, because they could. If you put the count before the total, you mess it up. So don't do that. All right, so this is the best way to do it. That's the end of the while loop. And so what I've just done there by outdenting here, that means that I've finished this bit of the program, right? I got the sale. I updated the total and I updated the count. So now I can go to this next thing. Okay. I even have the code there. Oh, what I should do, I've been trying to get into that habit. Just copy that. The average is going to be equal to the total divided by the count. And then we're going to print it. Now, so when we print a string. what string are we going to print? Well, it tells us what the string is going to be over here in the instructions, right? The average sale amount is. So I'm just going to copy that, paste it into the string. The problem there is, again, I've got a number here and I've got a number here. So I'm going to take these out and put strings in there for those numbers. That means when I do that, that's adding a string inside, right? Which string? So the sale amount for, that's the count. So I'm going to take that count from here maybe. So I'm going to print the count there. And then this is the average. So remove that. Again, do the string thing. And that's the average. And I think that's it for that one. I think that will work. Okay, let's see. Let's run it, which will require us to save it. When we save it as assignment 5, problem 1. So run the module. There we go. Okay. So now we can test it to see if it's working against ours. So we're going to try these 10 amounts. So the first one is 50, 55, 65, 75, 85, 95. Sales get better every day. That's nice. 45 and 40. And the average sale. So that seems to be working. It's working nice. And we got all the formatting right too, because we just copied the text. Copy paste will make your life easier, right? All right, so enough on that. Go on to the next one. Or you need some discussion of it. I am recording, so you can review the recording afterwards, okay? All right, let's look at the second one. Modify the program. So that is take our this program and make some changes to it to do something new. Well, the new thing it's going to do is the user is going to tell us how many times. So instead of doing it 10 times, the user will say, I'll do it 4 times or 5 times or 6 times or something like that. The user will tell us how many times to do it. So if we looked at this program is going to be the same, except the number 10 won't be there because we don't know how many times we're going to do it until the user tells us. So that's going to have to change. And then the user is going to tell us how many times we're going to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this start up here a bit, maybe make it a bit smaller so it doesn't take up as much room, and remove that arrow. The user needs to tell us how many times they're going to do it. So that would be get, what do they call it here? How many items? Get item count or something? That's a big word. Could I make it shorter than that? What could I call it? I count. Let's call it I count. Yeah. I count, which means the number of items. So that's the very first thing we're going to do in our program. So now I'm going to have to join that back into the program with a couple of arrows. Another arrow. Now, as I said, it's not going to be 10 times anymore. It's going to be until it's, I better make this bigger because it won't fit in otherwise. as long as it's less than the I count. So the user is going to tell us how many times to do it. That's the only change. Wasn't that easy? And again, what we did in the flow chart. Oh, one thing, I got the true here, but I should have had the false up here. That's better. So that's nice. I think that's the only change we need to make. Very easy to make that change in the Python as well. So what I'll do in the Python is I'll save this one under its new name, which will be, so do a save as, and that'll be problem 2. So we saved problem 1 already. Going to save another copy, but call it problem 2. And away we go. All we had to do is get the count from the user. And that was going to be, again, that's going to be an input. Inputs always have a string in the middle of them somewhere. And it's going to have to be a number, so we're going to have to convert it to an integer. So if I look and see the notes, it'll tell me how that looks. Yeah, how many items have you sold today? So I'm just going to take that, copy it, and paste it in there as the string. How many items have you sold today? Now, again, we have to just change this number here to be. And yeah, as soon as the count's equal to the I count, then we're done. Easy peasy. Let's run it and see if it works. How many items you sold today? Well, 5 apparently. And sale amount 1 is 50. Oh. I'm going to start this over again because I can't see it. It's running down the bottom of the screen. So let's run it again. Oh, sorry. Clumsy finger. All right, run it again. How many items have you sold today? Put the notes up here so we can see, so we can get the test data is in the Word document. 5 and 50, 55, 65. Yeah, I'm getting these numbers from over here, right? 75, 85. So it should automatically stop at 85 because our number is 5, right? If we did it right. Oh yeah, there we go. Yes. And the average is 66. So that worked perfectly. The only thing that we did again was we changed from the previous one is we added this I count thing that asked us how many times we're going to do it. And we changed the condition in the while so they included that I count. Easy peasy? Yeah, all right, next one. Oh, almost done. I can feel my weekend coming up. How about you guys? Can you feel it? Oh, yeah. Modify the program so that it's going to be a Sentinel loop instead of a counted loop. Okay, so that's different. Now with the Sentinel loop, this thing about putting the thing that does the condition of the loop, setting it before we do the loop, that's really important. What's really important is where you put the lines of code. If you put them in the wrong place, you get wrong averages, etc. So just watch carefully, where do we put the stuff? Let's also have a look at how it's going to look. In the first place, we're not going to count it anymore. We're still going to use count, but count's not going to be the thing that runs it, right? The condition is going to be, if we look at it, it says, we're going to keep going until the user enters 0. So when we're going to stop is nothing to do with count. It's going to be when the user enters 0. So it's when the sale is, we stay in the loop as long as the sale is not equal to 0. As soon as the sale becomes equal to 0, we stop the loop. So the condition for the loop is different. So this count thing, that's not going to, we don't need that. Instead of doing I count, what we're going to get is we're going to get the sale here. I want to move those around. Let's see. Well, we got the sale down here. So yeah, I'm going to delete this. So this time the count is not going to be controlling the loop. So the count doesn't have to be the last thing before the loop. We can have something else. I better remove. I've got so many arrows to remove. So this is going to be the first thing that happens in the loop instead of like the last thing before the loop. It's going to be the first thing that happens in the program instead of the last thing that happens before the loop. So we still have that, but what we're going to do is we're going to get the sale amount immediately before we go into the loop. So I'm going to copy this and paste it. Of course, it pastes right on top of where it was. That's all right. So that's going to go there, and I'm just going to join that with our arrows. So we're going to get the sale, and we're going to keep going until the sale is 0. All right. Now, we don't want to, this is a common mistake when we do these Sentinel loops, is we don't want to read this. We don't want to read the sale first thing in the loop. We want to read the sale last thing in the loop. Don't want to read it. So here we're reading it first thing. It needs to be the last thing that we do in the loop, also because it's controlling the loop. So we need to move this. If you don't move this, it will mess it up. So we do need to move that. I'm gonna delete it, I guess, and put it down here. And this is going to be the thing that's going to control the loop. So the loop now I hope that's going to work like that. I'll have to remove this arrow because the count no longer controls the loop. What controls the loop is the sale. And so sale controls the loop. So I'm going to see, we see it's a loop because the arrows are going backwards. So yeah, so what we did is we got a get sale last thing before the loop and a get sale last thing in the loop. And now that'll work. There's only one little issue that this might cause, and that is that what if the user puts the very first sale in as a 0? That would be bad. And it's possible that they would. They say get sale, and they say, we ask them for get sale, and they say 0. Well, then we would be dividing by 0 because our count would be 0, and that would be bad. So if we're going to have that situation, we have to have some way of trapping that so it doesn't become a problem for us. And so what we typically do is we just put a little if statement in there. Time's running out. That's okay. I got 10 minutes. I think we're going to finish before the 10 minutes is up. So I'm just going to say here, what if the count is 0? If the count is 0, then that would be bad because dividing by count would be a very bad thing. Come on. Where do I put that? There? Yeah, okay. Oh, for God's sake. No, it didn't get onto it, did it? There. So if the count, so this false is coming out of this statement, right? If it's false, we go and we check the count. Now, if the count is 0, what we're going to do is we'll, and I think I can do that out there. What we'll do is we'll make the average equal to 0. We'll set the average to 0. If the count is 0, we'll set the average to 0. But if the count isn't 0, we'll just calculate the average in the normal way. So that's all we had to do there. We just had a little diversion to take into account that we don't want to ever divide by 0, because dividing by 0 is a really bad idea, and we don't ever want to do that. And so we've got this little side, it looks like a side how you say, a detour. Yeah, we got a little detour here in the case where the sale, and so what if the counts, what's it's asking us here, let's just get that so we can read it. Well, if the count is equal to 0, if it is, we do that. So this is the false. And here's the true. Okay, so I'm not sure that I've explained that completely what I was trying to do there, but let's just go and make sure. So what we're saying is, so supposing the sale is 0 first time we come through, the count could be 0 then. If the count's 0, we don't want to divide by 0 because that would give us a big problem. So instead, we'll just set the average to 0 and we'll print it. But if the count is not 0, then we're going to calculate the average. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's what we do. That's our flow chart now. So we can easily change our program to match our flow chart. I'll take the old program, problem 3, and I'll save it as problem 2, and I'll save it as problem 3. Save that, and we'll make the changes. So we're not going to read this anymore. Instead of reading that, we're going to read the sales, right? So I'm going to cut this out. That's not there anymore. And the sales amount, we're going to cut that also because we're going to use it, but just not there. So I'm going to Control X that. This is all just, and put this back in here. Last thing we do before the loop, and last thing we do inside the loop. Easy peasy, just like that. There wasn't much to change, was it? Am I missing anything? Oh, yes. We decided that, well, what about the if it's 0? So we could put that after the loop. If count is 0, then we're going to set the average to 0. Otherwise, we just do the average in the normal way. There it is. So I need to tab that in so it's part of that else. There's your program completed. Shall we see if it'll work? This isn't problem 2, this is problem 3, right? So I did save that as problem 3. Yes. So save it again and run it. Okay, so let's go and look at our things. All right, so problem 3, we're going to do these amounts, 50. Oops, we got an error. I count is not defined. Well, that almost always means that I typed it 2 different ways. I should have done the copy paste, right? So I told you about copy paste and then I didn't do it. So I count is pointed to paint. Where's I count? Well, okay. I'm missing a thing, which was I count. I shouldn't do I count, right? Where's the print with the I count? I didn't change the I count. Yeah, there we go. So that's it. I didn't. So what it's supposed to be is while sale is not equal to 0. Silly me. There we go. So I was still trying to control it with the old control because I was in too much of a hurry to get to my weekend. Right. Let's see now. So sale controls the loop, and I had failed to do that. So we got it in there now. Let's run it and see. Sale amount 1. Now the conditions are here. All right. Yeah, that looks the same. Sale amount 1. What if we had a 50? Then what if we had a 55? Then what if we had a 65? Then what if we had a 75? Oh, 75. And then what if we put a 0? Okay, so that works. Got the same number. We could try and run it again to see if our error tracking works. What if they put in straight away 0? Average 0. So it works. Otherwise, it would have come up with the error. So that's it. Any questions? Khalas. Khalas and Zain. The Punisher. The Punisher may go on their weekend now. That's good. All right, so I'm going to finish unless there's some questions. I don't see anything in the chat on questions. And nobody in class is asking any questions?